In Detective Comics, Batman has built his own special ops team of the entire Bat family, and he included Clayface as an attempt to reform him. Well, the storyline has finally gotten to the point where Batman will have to face off against the Clayface that he has trained. But before we can come to the conclusion of that, I want to start this video by bringing you the origin of Clayface, and then the conclusion to the fall of the Batmen. At a young age, Basil Carlo was exposed to the bright lights of Hollywood through his father, Vincent Carlo. Back then, Basil would often find himself looking at the old monster costumes that his father wore on the set, amazed at just how real they looked. One night in the stuffy apartment, Vincent pointed to Mardok the Man-Ape, stating that everyone knew the actor Chandler Ebb was the one that was inside of it. But when the lights hit just right and he roared, the audience forgot for a brief moment that someone was underneath that mask. It wasn't the monster that they saw anymore, it was something honest and powerful that hit them right in the heart and terrified them. Vincent then grabs a jar of a substance called Renew, going on stating that a face can be shaped and molded to draw out the strange and the horrific. This here is the key to that success. On the jar, the words, "not for human use," can be read, and Vincent tells Basil that once you mix this industrial chemical with a bit of wax and putty, you can rework it. Vincent turns around applying the chemical, and when he turns back, his skin is pulled back, revealing a glaring smile, and he says that with this, people can see something more real. Vincent begins to wipe the wax off, asking his son to forgive him. He's never really been good at happy faces. He's always been suited for horror. The tone in Vincent's voice turns into one of sadness, and he says that there's a monster in all of them. They must work hard to never let anyone see it. You can only show them your best face, no matter how false it is, because in the end, no one really loves a monster. 20 years later, Basil followed in his father's footsteps in becoming an actor, and a well-known one at that. As Basil and his agent Cal sit for dinner, Cal goes on stating that with their recent success, directors from all over are crawling to them with offers. Basil laughs, telling him that he's not going to be going to any more meetings until he can get in the room for second skin. Cal says sure he could, but that movie is all wrong for him. They just got done with doing so many movies where he looks like the bad guy. Soon people will believe that he's the bad guy. Not to mention, Veronica St. Clair is a real prude and she'll kick anyone off the set for as little as forgetting a line. Basil's phone begins to ring and he reaches forward stating that he wants that role. He wants to be on that movie, Second Skin. Its story is something close to home for him. As he looks at his phone, he says that he's sorry, he's got to take it. It's Glory. Cal asks who? The PA from Metamorphosis? He's got to shake her off before she sees what he really is. And that is a movie star, baby. The next morning, Basil meets with Glory to see the sun rise over LA. And she says that it's like you can almost see how beautiful the city is from up here. He stares off, telling her yeah. She asks what's with him today. Why is he so nervous about this next audition? And what's so special about a silent movie monster that is so appealing? He explains that it's about a man who's consumed with sadness and anger, and it burns him and those around him. His dad was a lot like that, and it just feels like something that he needs to do. Show people that you can show the world your dark side, and people will still embrace you. Finally, show the world the real you. Later that day after the audition, Basil calls Glory to tell her that he got the part. He nailed it. He's gonna be moving to Gotham for 6 months for shooting. She tells him that's amazing. They need to celebrate and get some drinks. How about she picks up the finest $15 Prosecco in all of the land? Just before Basil can answer, his phone beeps, and he says that he's gonna have to call her back. He needs to take this. He answered it, and a voice asks if it's Basil Carlo. They need to inform him of some bad news. His father was found dead in his apartment. His eyes go wide, and there's a loud screech, and then a crash. A short while later, he opens up his eyes, and when he does, he sees Glory and Cal looking at him horrified. He asks why they're looking at him like that, and Glory says that they're just happy to see him alive. He almost didn't make it. And he tells her, no, Cal's look. Glory hands him a mirror, stating that he's been through a lot. They both care so much about him. He looks at his face, now all scarred and deformed, and he quietly says, oh God. He leans down to try and hide, and Glory tells him that it's going to be okay, and he screams, don't look at me! No one can see me like this! And Cal tells him that that's his cue to leave then. He's not going to sugarcoat things. No one's going to want that face. Once Basil is well enough to leave the hospital, he makes his way to his father's old apartment in search of what his father showed him a long time ago. The jars of Renew. He takes one of those jars and he pours the chemical into a clump of clay and he begins to apply it to his face. And the next day, at the second skin office, Cal tells Veronica that he has someone else that it would be perfect for the role here, and just then, the door opens and Basil walks in, his face completely healed, stating that that won't be necessary. He's looking just as good as ever, right? After the meeting, Glory runs out to see Basil and calls out to him, asking how did he recover so quickly. He tells her to keep her voice down. This is just how he looks. Don't go off talking about something horrible that had happened to him and never bring it up again. Glory turns away, telling him, yeah, that won't be a problem. As he heads home, he notices his supply of Renew is running low, and it looked like the manufacturer was based out of Gotham. 3 weeks later, in Gotham, Jim Gordon plays a recording to Batman stating that it was taken from the Quality Assurance Department of Daggett Chemicals. Even though it's a product that's been discontinued, a man called in screaming and demanding that he be given some. The product Renew was a type of gel used to remold plastics without heat. It was taken off of the shelves 20 years ago because it had a bad habit of melting the hands of people. Outside of Daggett warehouse, Basil begins to put on the wax, changing himself into one of the security guards stationed in the building. He breaks in and finds a whole room full of Renew, and he says that he can finish the movie with this much. And just then, Batman appears, telling Basil to step away from the boxes before he gets hurt. He shouts that he doesn't understand. He needs that stuff, and there's nothing that will stop him from getting it. Batman punches Basil on the face, and as he pulls his fist back, he can see what the chemicals have done to his face. And later, as Basil wakes up, he finds himself cuffed to a bed, and he screams to the nurse to give him a mirror. A hand reaches down with one and he snatches it, and once he sees his face, he tries to hide it, yelling that no one can see him like this. The voice then says, too late for that, and tosses a newspaper with the headline, acclaimed actor turned into clay-faced crook. As he looks up, he sees the person talking to him is Veronica, and she tells him that, she would have casted him regardless of what happened to him. It wasn't his looks that they were after, it was his eye. That dark sadness that needed to be seen. Then he could show the world who he was. But now, with all this fake acting, he isn't going to be a part of the movie anymore. As she turns to leave, Basil looks in the mirror again and he hears a loud roaring thunder. Lightning strikes, and as he looks up, he sees Batman standing there and he tells him, Basil Karlo, you have a choice to make. Basil shouts, a choice? I'm a monster! I used to be an actor! I was going to be one of the greats, but you cost me everything! Batman tells him, no, you're not a monster. You're a man lashing out because you feel trapped and alone. Daggett isn't going to be pressing charges because technically they shouldn't even be having this stuff, but in the morning, we're gonna go see Harvey Dent. The next morning, Basil heads over to the DA's office to speak to Harvey, and as soon as he gets in, he grabs a woman and presses a gun to her head, shouting, where is it? The two nearby guards pull out their guns, and one tells him that Renew is in evidence room 6. Basil takes the woman running into the room, and the first guard whispers to the other one that he heard that Mr. Daggett is offering a big payout to keep this whole thing quiet. He doesn't want people knowing that he still had this stuff, so if they can silence Karlo, there's a big payday for both of them. Inside of the evidence room, Basil pushes the woman away, looking at the jars, stating, yes, yes! But before he could grab a jar, the guards open fire, hitting the jars, covering Basil's entire body in the chemical. The guards state that it looks like he won't be stating anything to anyone now, and then there's a low, scruffy voice asking for a mirror. Over on the set of Veronica's movie, Cal welcomes the new replacement actor, and Glory tells her that they themselves have a visitor today. As they look back, they see Batman, and he tells everyone, you need to run, now! Loud thumps can be heard in the distance as Basil breaks through the walls, telling Batman, I made my choice. Basil swings an arm, knocking Batman away, and instead of running, Glory runs up telling Basil that she doesn't know what happened, but she knows that he's not really a monster. Basil pulls out a jar of Renew, asking, don't you get it? There's a monster inside of all of us. Let me show you. And then he pours it onto Glory. And in doing so, he broke a promise. Long ago, while sitting with his father, watching another horror movie, the woman on the TV shouts, get back, you hideous beast. Vincent turned to his son, stating that he wanted him to promise him something. No matter what, he wouldn't let anyone see the monster inside. And Basil looks back at his father, telling him, yeah, I promise. Now it's time for the continuation of the fall of the Batman story. Now that you have seen where Basil Karlo came from and how he became Clayface, it's time to see what he's going to do now that he is no longer working with Batman but against him. Recently, the band that was allowing him to keep control of himself was broken off by the victim syndicate, and as Batman went in to save Clayface, he was forced to fight Clayface, who he has now trained to fight. As Clayface steps forward, he goes on telling him, I'm gonna take a guess that you're probably going to say that this isn't me, right? That this monster really isn't who I am. Well, I have news for you. That's all wrong. It's been wrong since the beginning, Batman. Clayface then takes a swing, grabbing a hold of Batman, telling him, I'm just a freaking bad guy. I hurt people and I don't care. Batman struggles, telling him, yes, you do. And Clayface throws him, shouting, shut up! Batman's body is thrown into the storage room containing all of the villain's weaponry, and he gets up stating, "All you're doing is lashing out. Let us help you." And Clayface shouts, telling him, "Shut up!" As Clayface pulls back to hit Batman, Batman grabs Mr. Freeze's freeze gun, freezing him in place. Batman then drops the gun, telling Clayface that they will help him. He promised him that months ago. But then Batman stops and switches his mask to thermal mode. Kate radios in asking if he's got Basil yet, and Batman smashes the ice, yelling, "No, damn it, he made a husk of himself. He's gone through the sewers. He's headed for the Belfry." As Batman begins to walk back out of the Arkham gates, Mayor Atkins says that the first victim in Anarchy escaped. The people in the streets are rioting. He knew that this would. But Batman stops him, telling him, "I spent most of my career operating in direct defiance of your office. I recognize what's about to happen, and I'm going to make it right." He continues walking towards the Batmobile, and Mayor Atkins tells him, "Clayface belongs in this asylum. He's a monster." Batman jumps into the car and says, "So am I. Now stay out of my way." Elsewhere, the first victim in Anarchy watches as the protests get larger in size, and Anarchy says that it is finally happening. The people are taking back the power. The first victim tells him that this is good. He wants to be there when it happens. He wants to see the bats die. Anarchy pauses and tells him, "The people would be better served with our presence. They are frightened, and now is the moment that we can light the fire of the revolution." The first victim tells him, "I don't care about tomorrow. Today is what I've been waiting for years. I want to hear Batman scream as he loses everything." Out in the streets, Kate is watching over everything, and Jacob's voice tells her, "Thanks for coming. I know this is an all-hands-on-deck situation." And Kate tells him, "Make it fast. Batman has coverage on the Belfry. We need to stop Clayface before he hurts anyone else." Jacob sets down the briefcase, telling her, "This will only take a moment. I wanted to give this as a good sign of faith." Kate opens up the case and sees a gun, and Jacob explains that this is one of the last weapons that Ulysses developed. It was for the colony to defend against Clayface. It starts a chain reaction that destabilizes his molecular structure so that it can't adhere to itself. This is the only rifle ever constructed. And Kate says that it would kill Clayface. Why would he give this to her? He knows that Batman would never allow killing of any of his villains, let alone an ally. Jacob hands the case over, telling her, "Maybe we can break it apart and make it not lethal. This is not my territory, but if it becomes necessary, I wanted you to have it." She takes the case and begins to walk away, telling him, "Thanks." Later, as she returns to the Belfry, Tim looks at her, asking where she's been. They've radioed, but Kate stops him, telling him that she was on reconnaissance. Tim then runs over, shouting that she's lying, but Batman separates them, stating that whatever this thing is between them, he's had enough of it. Just then, from the bell, Clayface appears, telling them, "So have I." As he grows larger, Clayface swings, knocking Tim away, and then he creates spikes, swinging it back towards him. Kate tries to distract him by throwing batarangs, but Clayface swings back, hitting her, telling her that she knows that he's going to kill her, right? "You already got the flash forward." He then creates an image of future Tim, stating, "Maybe we can make a reenactment." Batman then runs in, kicking a hole through Clayface, telling him, "Stop." And Clayface creates an image of past villains, asking, "Who are you gonna sign up on the Bat Team thing next, huh?" He then creates another spiked ball, hurling it at Batman, shouting, You don't care about any of them." Cassandra steps in front of them, telling him, "Not true." And Clayface tells her, "Get out of the way." And she says, "No. If don't care, hurt me." Clayface begins growing before her, yelling, "I will." And Cassandra tells him, "Do it." Clayface begins to tremble, and then he falls to the ground, stating, he doesn't want to. What is he doing? Why is he hurting her? Suddenly, an alert goes off, and Tim says that there's been damage to the mudroom. It's about to expel all of the excess clay that they've been using for training. Kate asks, what are they talking about? There's hundreds and hundreds of gallons of it in there. And just then, as Clayface looks up, he sees the excess clay beginning to drip onto him. He yells that he doesn't want. He can't think. Run! And as the clay starts to pour out, the Belfry Tower begins to explode with clay. Clayface pulls himself out of the top of the tower, screaming. He continues growing at an alarming rate, destroying the rest of the Belfry in his wake. And through the debris, Tim is knocked and thrown aside. Kate swings by, quickly grabbing him, falling onto a nearby roof. Everyone else begins to arrive, and Stephanie swings down, asking what the hell happened. Batman follows up, stating that the excess clay in the mudroom is what happened. Once he lands, he tells Stephanie and Cassandra to head over to Monster Town. They need Dr. October working on it, and right now, I'm gonna lead Clayface there. Before leaving, he looks back at Kate and he tells her, I'm gonna need you above all of the action. Keep me pointed to Monster Town. Down on the streets, the people hold their protests as they feel the rumbling in the ground. Clayface pulls himself out, roaring at the crowds. He begins to reach for them, but as he does, several missiles hit him in the back of the head. Batman shouts that he doesn't want them. You wanted to fight me, right? Clayface turns back, trying to hit Batman in the Batmobile, but Batman speeds off, having Clayface chase him. Watching all of the chaos from above, the first victim asks Anarchy if he can hear it. The music that is playing for us. Anarchy says that he hears the people terrified out of their minds. When he first came here, he wanted to help them. And the first victim tells him, We are helping. Batman put the weapon into my hand, and I'm merely pulling the trigger. Anarchy points at him, telling him, these people trusted you. They believed in your message. And as the staff bounce off the reflective barrier, Anarchy tells him, yeah, well, I'm an idealist. Back in the streets, Luke sends out all of the bat drones to keep focus on Batman, and as Clayface lashes out, he destroys several of the robots in one swing. Over in Victoria's lab, Tim starts getting up from the bed asking what happened, and Stephanie tries to lay him down, telling him that he has a concussion, but he's fine now. Tim continues to try and get up, stating, but the victims' day rallies. Suddenly a voice tells them that they are dispersing. He sent a signal throughout the Syndicate's network. The first victim wanted to make them martyrs. Tim and Stephanie look over to see Anarchy throwing the first victim's body to the ground, and he finishes up stating that he couldn't live with the kind of blood on his hands. Stephanie runs over hugging him, and he tells her that she's not going to see him for a while. Is she sure she's where she wants to be? Stephanie says that she's where she needs to be. That's what matters for now. Anarchy hands over a small jump drive, stating that she's going to have to give this to Batman. It might give him enough to start putting together who exactly the first victim is. Back outside, Kate keeps watch over the streets, stating that this isn't going to work. She opens up the case that her father gave her, telling Batman that they may need to discuss a permanent solution for Clayface. If Victoria's cure works, they might be able to neutralize him. But Jacob has also given her a special kind of gun. Batman says, I will not allow any colony weapons to be fired in this city. We stick to the plan. Kate asks what happens when the plan fails. Then Bruce tells her, we need to clear the line. I've led Clayface too. Just then, his eyes widen as Clayface begins to grow around the streets, roaring as his mouth fully forms. As the Batmobile is tossed away, Cassandra jumps down onto Clayface's back, and she runs up, slamming a syringe into him. He howls in pain, and then he begins to shriek, growing smaller until he's finally Basil Carlo. He's finally human. He falls to his knees, looking around, asking what's going on. Did he do all of this? Is it over? And Cassandra says, no, you'll turn back. Too much clay. Clayface sulks, stating, of course, it'd be too easy for him to just be good, wouldn't it? He can't do it. Cassandra leans down, telling him, you are good. I know you. I see you. I like you. Clayface looks up, stating that bad guys don't get happy endings. And just then, his skin begins to change back, and he tries to keep himself together. Suddenly, Cassandra hears a voice from the radio, and Kate tells her to close her eyes. Before Cassandra has a chance to understand what she meant, the bullet is shot, hitting Clayface in the side of the head, ending him. And there you have it, the death of Clayface. I'm actually sad about this because one of my favorite things in DC Rebirth has been this Detective Comics run and basically Clayface becoming a hero, working with Cass, the two of them helping each other get past their past. Try saying that 3 times fast. Get past their past. It doesn't work. Anyway, let me know how you feel about the loss of Clayface, and moving forward, if you think that maybe the team should get a different villain, or perhaps they should bring back Clayface. He's made out of clay. I don't know. Maybe it can work. This is comic books after all. Anyway, let's have a moment of silence for Clayface as the patrons go through the screen. I think that was a moment. You have a good night.